Hi, today I want to show you how this one simple n8n automation workflow has helped me gain over 70+% returns on my stock investments over the last 3 months. Let me show you how. So as you can see in this workflow, what it's essentially giving me is this list of investing daily digest. And if I just click into one of these, what you will see is a list of high signal investing updates that has been posted over the last 24 hours. And so as you can see in this email, if I just scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see this post here, right? Like Canteen is a good long-term opportunity. And then it says, if I just click into this Reddit thread, it will then bring me to this, right? Where it shows this pleasant anomaly saying that this is perhaps a good long-term opportunity to hold. And then it then goes ahead to justify why this might be a good opportunity, and then what is the path back to profitability, and then possible risk, right? So as an investor myself, I will take this, I'll continue reading the comments, looking at what people are saying, and in general I think the sentiment here is pretty bullish. Like, people are all saying that this is also a good long-term opportunity. So what I will do then is say, okay, so a lot of people are saying a lot of good things about this stock, so let me go ahead and check this out. So what I'll do next is to then go ahead and check out what exactly is going on with this stock, right? Canteen stock. And as you can see that over a 1 year period, this stock has plummeted, right? It has went from $80 to $25. So you can say, okay, this might be a opportunity, right? But is it a good stock or not? And so that's where you can kind of like do some more market research in the industry, in the company, etc. And so what this email daily digest essentially does is that it opens up your exposure to a lot of these stocks that you wouldn't have otherwise been able to find out, right? Or it might take you longer to eventually find them out. Whereas now, because you have had this inflow of updates from Reddit where people are posting about these good opportunities, what is happening in the market, what is Trump doing, for example, then you'll be able to combine all of these things and then make better investing decisions. But of course, do bear in mind that, this is not the end all be all. This is just a tool for you to be 100 times more effective when it comes to investments. But at the end of the day, you still need to know your investing fundamentals and make sure that you know what you're doing before you actually purchase stocks. And so as you can see, what I've been doing is I've just been collecting a lot of these investing daily digest over the last couple of weeks, right? And what I've been doing is every day I'll just look through in the morning, I'll just look through what is going on. As you can see here, Lululemon stock drop raises questions of quality and competition. Hey, maybe Lululemon might be a good opportunity to buy right now, or maybe not, right? Or you can even look at, it says that Apple shares largest gain. So now you know that, okay, Apple is doing pretty well. And then here, Apple's recent announcements of 100 billion investments. So you can say, hey, okay, now I understand why Apple has kind of like, the stock is rising, right? Because they announced 100 billion investment in the US, and then after that, the next day, the stock started to rise. So you can see that these things are correlated and just help you make better informed decisions as well. And then you can even see like, Duolingo reported strong Q2 2025 results. Despite this success, users have expressed frustrations over the app's ads and stuff like that. So this will just help you understand more about what Duolingo is doing, what are their latest updates, etc. And bear in mind that if you look at this workflow, all of these posts that you're seeing is arranged in a manner that it starts from the most high signal post, and then as it goes down, it becomes a lower signal. What this means is, when I mean signal, what I mean is this exact node right here, right? So you can see that we would only extract the Reddit post that has a score of more than 30, and this means more than 30 upvotes, or net upvotes, right? And then this is essentially saying we want only posts that has been posted over the last 24 hours. So this makes sure that emails that we're getting in consist of fresh Reddit posts. And so yeah, let me just do a quick demo, right? If I just go ahead and run this workflow, and then I'll just limit them to about 2 Reddit posts in a single email just to keep it quick, and I just want to see you what the result looks like. And I think one thing that I want to point out is, as you can see here, when you can see that this get subreddit threads, right? And if you click inside, what it's essentially doing is routing this to this ID, and you notice that this ID is actually the same thing as the current window that we're on. And the reason for that is because I've included the sub workflow below here. And so every time this gets invoked, what it's essentially doing is calling this sub workflow. And if you look at the executions, you'll see that. So if you look at my time zone, which is 7:50, this was the original parent workflow that was called. And then when this is running, when this runs, essentially it calls this workflow, which would then run the sub workflow here, right? So this is just something for you to note as well. Every time when you want to include the sub workflow in the same window, you can just always bring it in here. But then when you're saying, and then you can just include the workflow ID into this field right here. Okay, as you can see that this workflow has now ran successfully. Just open up the email, right? So as you can see that we have sent the email to hanya123@gmail.com, which is my own personal email. And so if I just open this up, you'll see it here, 7:51, which is the time that it has sent the email. And then if I just click into Investing Daily Digest, you'll see these two posts here. And so it seems like from everything is collected, the top two posts is Trump extends China tariff deadline by 90 days, which is what happened last night actually. And then Trump administration to take 15% of Nvidia and AMD sales. And so if I click into this Reddit thread, you'll see that this post has been posted 5 hours ago, and there's also massive amounts of upvotes, right? And you can also see for this post here, 21 hours ago, which is still within 24 hours, and then you also have 1.7k upvotes, right? So you can see that these are the highest signal posts across the few subreddits that I put into the workflow. So I want to show you guys how you can use this workflow. So essentially, if you look at this note here, it says set topic. So essentially set subreddits you wish to track, very simply, right? And so if you click inside, you'll see what is the topic. And this topic here essentially, if you look at this email, the first word of the topic of this email, right, is startups. And here you can see like investing, which means investing, and then I will then append daily digest when it sends the email. So you can just put whatever topic that you're interested in, so that it shows the right name in your inbox, right? So this is like, for me, it's investing, and then this is the subreddit, the subreddits that I would like to track. So in my case, because this is investing, I want to track about in the investing subreddit, which if I just go to Reddit quickly, you can see that investing essentially comes from the investing subreddit, and then there's also the stocks sub, this one here, right? So as you can see, just when you're putting in the subreddit names, just omit the r/, just put in the actual name of the subreddit. So that is subreddits, and then after that you have email, which is whatever email that you want to use, whatever email that you want to send the daily digest to. So once you've set that, and then you can just let it run, because here what it does is that it kind of like schedules it to run every morning at 6 a.m. in my case. And then on top of that, so obviously you can kind of like tweak that to set whatever time that you like, whether it's 7 a.m., whether it's in the evening, etc. And then you can even set, it's very flexible. You can even set like, you know, whether you want it every 2 weeks, etc. And then if you're doing it maybe every 2 weeks or every month, you can do a more comprehensive script every time, right? Because in my case, in this workflow, what I'm doing is I'm actually focusing on the last 24 hours, and for a post that has a score of more than 30, meaning like upvotes and stuff, it exceeds 30. So I only want the high signal post in my case, because it consumes a lot of tokens when you scrape too many posts, and across, can you imagine like each post, if there is like a lot of text, right, then every time you scrape, you'll be feeding so much text, and that will consume a lot of tokens. And so this node here, this filter node, is really just a way for me to contain the cost, and also in a way my time, right, every morning, like I just want to look at post that has done really well. That kind of signals that it is a high signal post. Once you have set the time, and you've also set the subreddit, the email, etc. The other thing that you need to do is you need to set the time zone, right? Because depending on where you're from, 6 a.m. here. So if you look back at this note, right, it says 6 a.m. But this 6 a.m. is actually referring to America/New York time. And so depending on where you're from. In my case, let's say I'm from Malaysia, so let's just put Singapore, which is the closest nearest country, and we share the same time zone. And so in my case, I'll set Asia Singapore, and so then I'll press save. And so what this means is that now instead of getting a 6 a.m. Instead of getting sent to my inbox at 6 a.m., I'll get the emails at 6 a.m. in my local time zone, right? So that's the first thing that you need to do in order to run this workflow. And then now let's give it a test run, right? So I'm just gonna put a manual trigger in, right? Then I'm gonna connect this so that now I can actually like manually trigger the workflow. So let's just give this a test run. Right, okay. So while that is running, let me just walk you through on a high level what this workflow actually does. So there are three high level steps that happens here. The first is it kind of like goes through the subreddits that you have indicated in this node, so investing in stocks, and then it takes out all the subreddit the posts in the subreddit, and then it kind of like filters it based on filters of your preference. In my case, I set it to the last 24 hours, which is what's going on here, and then also that I want the post of the score of the post to be more than 30. So you can see here that a lot of items has been discarded, right? It's like 668 posts that has been discarded because of my filter. And this is my way of kind of like making sure that the list is comprehensively capturing only high signal posts. And if you can see in the discarded posts, you'll see a lot of like, I'm not sure why this is 614, which is being discarded. That's interesting. Oh yeah, I think that's because those are already beyond the 24-hour time, beyond 24 hours, right? So that's why. So let's just double check. So if you go to this post, you'll see that it's 1 day ago, meaning it's been more than 24 hours, because everything that's less than 24 hours will be stated like something hours ago, right? So as you can see, a lot of these posts are already getting filtered out. For example, you'll see some of these like even score of 50. If you just go and see that. Oops. Yeah, so you'll see that this is first of all 22 days ago, and there's also not a lot of upvotes. There's like 15 upvotes, which is exactly what you see here. So score is essentially upvotes. So yeah, so this node essentially kind of like keeps it to the high signal nodes, and this is what this whole workflow is doing here on a high level. And then after that, for each of these posts that has been extracted, which is this 19 items, this workflow will then go through each of those posts and then builds a whole thread around the post. And so what you can imagine is, for example, if we look at this post, right? And I'm just gonna put this side by side just for easy comparison. But what you see here is we have the post title, and then we have the post body, which is little toddler Donnie, etc. The CEO of Intel is highly conflicted and must resign immediately. Okay, that's very controversial. And then we have the first comment here is he really thinks he's the owner of everyone and everything in the US. And then the reply to that is no, he thinks he is the world emperor. Okay, so I think one of the common thing that you see in a lot of workflows on n8n related to Reddit is oftentimes it captures the title, the body, and then only the first comment of the post. It doesn't capture the replies, right? And so what I've done here is I made sure to capture not just posts, but also comments and also replies, including if the comments or reply or even the post has a score which is upvotes or downvotes of a certain amount that is worthy of taking note of, it would also capture that in the workflow as well. So what this does is that it kind of provides the AI, which is on the next step, on what are the comments that are controversial or more heavily weighted, so that it kind of like knows where to give more emphasis. So if you look at this node here, build thread text, right? So you'll see that this is essentially the whole post that you're seeing on the right hand side. So let's just like give a quick look through and see if it actually accurately captures the entire post. So you can see, okay, the post is Trump, the CEO of Intel, similar, and then we have little toddler, etc. Dolly, which is this, and then it also captures the links, so that's fine. And then after that, on the first comment, we can see that, okay, first of all, we'll say higher in stocks because of this auto mod, right? And then after auto moderator, and then we'll see, okay, let me just filter this. Okay, so now oops. Okay, so here you can see that he really thinks he's the owner of everyone, which is this comment essentially. And then the reply to that is no. He thinks he is the world emperor, and his fans wish it so, and his fans wish it so. So you can see that it accurately captures the entire post, right? This is what it does, right? For each of those posts, of the 19 items that has been filtered out, kept in from the filter, we'll see that there's also 19 items here, right? So if we just like click all, and then we go down this list, we'll see that all these different posts has been accurately captured. So we have 19 of them. Okay, so now that we're done with processing each post, we then go on to actually summarizing the post, and then in the last note here, we can see that we're just sending that over to our email. Alright, now that I've shown you how the workflow works on a high level, I think what will be helpful is to walk you guys through node by node in terms of how do you actually configure these nodes and what actually happens under the hood. So let me just go and zoom in on this particular workflow as a start. So I think I've covered schedule daily run, and I've also covered set what nodes, what topic, what subreddits, and what email address do you like to put in as well. And then so what this node then does is it takes the subreddit that you have fed in, because assuming that you will feed in an array is basically a collection of subreddits that you'll be providing in, and that's indicated by this square bracket outside here. So usually, as you can see, it appears in a single row, and eventually when you get to the Reddit node where you want to start to, because what this Reddit node does is that it takes in each of the subreddit that you have provided, which is in this field here, and then it kind of like extracts all the posts in that subreddit. And the way that you kind of like tell this node on what kind of posts that you want to extract is by this category filter. In my case, I filtered for hot posts because that is where the high signal post that is the most recent usually is, right? So this is where, you provide the category here, and then the subreddit, and then it essentially extracts all the Reddit posts in that subreddit. So in order to do that, this node basically runs it one at a time, right? And it wouldn't be able to kind of like take in two values at the same time. But what you can do is then to separate that into two different line items. And so what this then does is that it kind of like allows this Reddit node to run twice, right? One for the first time for investing subreddit, and then the second time for stock subreddit. So once that's done, here we're just like putting in a way to allow because if you look at the results from the Reddit node, the time that has been indicated is actually like in a very weird format. You see here, right, created UTC. It's like some random string here of numbers, but actually what this number then becomes is an actual date time, right? But it needs some formatting, and so this is what the code here essentially does. So now we have August 2025, which is the time today. So this is just essentially taking the previous record that we have here and then combining it with the ISO date time format that we have, so that we can incorporate that into our entire item. As you can see, I think it's not captured here. 1 second. Yeah, as you can see here, right, created ISO is here, and then the rest of this is just from the previous Reddit node, which is from here. And then after that, here, this is just a quick filtering, meaning we want to extract all the columns from here. We want to extract all the relevant columns only, because there's obviously a lot of columns here that you don't actually need, like mod season title, link flare, and even like author full name. We don't really need those, right? So what it does here is it then select the fields, which is what we want is ID. We want the Reddit, the post, the score of the post, we want the URL of the post, because this will essentially be used in the email, right? We'll provide a summary of the Reddit post, and then we'll have like a view Reddit post link that you can just click on if you're interested in that particular summary of what actually happened, right? Then you can just click on that link, and it'll direct you to that particular Reddit post. And then the subreddit is just for like your own information. So once you've done that, what you see is something like that. It's a lot cleaner compared to the previous table that you've seen. There's like a bunch of fields that are irrelevant for our use case. Here we have subreddit ID, score, URL, and the date. And then what the date would then be used for is actually to then say, okay, we want only the last 24 hours post. And then after that, we also have json.score, which is the score of the post in terms of upvotes or downvotes. And here you can see I only want posts that are above 30. And the reason why I've set 30 is because just based on quick eyeball, I realized that a lot of the really high signal posts are usually above 30. And if it's below that, usually it's like, it's kind of interesting, but they are just a lot of them. There's just a lot of posts between the 20 to 30 range that some are interesting and most are not. So I kind of like kept it to 30. So this is something that you need to look. You kind of need to like understand your subreddit and see like what is the score that might make sense for your subreddit. So once you've done that, here what I've done is I've sorted by score so that eventually in my email that you see here, the top summaries are the ones with the highest score, and then as you go down, the score gets lower and lower, right? So this is so that if let's say one day you don't have a lot of time and you just want to like scan through the highest signal posts, then you don't have to look through the whole thing. You can just look through like the first 3 or the first 5, and then you should get a good idea of like everything that's going on in terms of what's actually important. So this is what the sort by score is doing. Now as you move into process each post, so this is where it gets the ID, and this is where the ID is important, right? This ID field here, because what happens is it will then be passed into this Reddit get post node, and what it does is we will then pass in the ID of the post and also the subreddit, and then what it does is it would extract the contents from that post. So here you can see self text, which is essentially the title and let me just show you, right? So if you look at get post by ID, and if you look at self text, this is essentially this whole thing right here. And then what happens is, once we've gotten all of that post, meaning we now have 19 items, right, from the previous node, and this deduplicate by ID is just to make sure that we are not extracting duplicates. Sometimes it happens, but most of the time it's fine, but it's just included here just for precautionary measures. So we have the deduplicate by ID to make sure that every single record is unique. And then after that, we will then start to build the post body, which what happens is we would kind of like give post ID, comment ID, and parent ID to each of these rows. And what is important here is that this would then be crucial when we eventually start to combine, when we want to combine all of the comments and all of the replies together. Because the way that the algorithm would essentially do it is, for each of these replies, it would map it back to the parent ID, which is, for instance, this replies parent ID post. Parent ID would be this guy right here, right? Likewise, for this guy, the parent of this guy would be the high level post. And you can see, so that's where the parent ID, that's where the utility is at. And then you have the post ID, which is just telling it, on a broad sense, which post it belongs. Once you have that post body, or it's just like a way to kind of like allow the algorithm to later navigate, we then start to get the top level comments. And this top level comments is basically let's just say like the L1 level, like the L1 comments, which is these high level comments. So this one is a top level comment, and then the next top level comment is this guy, right? So you can see like the ones with just one line outside it. Those are top level comments. Everything beneath it is essentially like replies, and they're not top level comments. So what it then does is, okay, because, and the reason why I'm naming it this way is because of the inherent nature of these get all, like, post comment and then get many. The inherent nature of how this works is that it only goes through the post and gets the top layer of the comments. And that's why a lot of the times when you see like a lot of n8n workflows that uses these subreddit extracts from Reddits or Reddit posts, a lot of the time they're only extracting the post body and also the top level comments, and everything else is being missed out. But in our case, we will extract everything, right? Because now that we have extracted the top level comments, we will then start to also flatten comment threads. And what this does is we're essentially now starting to go through every single replies. As you can see here, no, he thinks he's a world emperor, which is this, and his fans wishes so, which is this. So now we're starting to use this code node over here to then extract all the childrens of the top level comments, right? So you can see that here we have this function called walk children, and what this complicated node, the code here actually does is that it kind of just goes through each top level comment and then extracting all their child node, right? Which is essentially like this guy's child is this, and that is by using the parent ID association. So what you get is this, and honestly, like, I just use Claude or ChatGPT to make this code node for me, right? I didn't like actually write this out myself, and so it's very possible. It's very possible if, as long as you know like how you want it to roughly work, to just tell ChatGPT, okay, this is how I see it kind of working. Can you just write the code node for me? And usually, most of the time, it kind of works. Okay, so now that we have flattened the comment threads and then we have filtered out the valid comments as well, here we just want to make sure that all of these comments are like, and replies are valid, are from Reddit, like valid post ID sources. And then after that, we then as you can see, it kind of like flows from the post body, which is the high level post, meaning this top post, and then we're also combining all the comments and all of that happens in this merge node, and we're appending both of them here, right? So you can see that these without comment ID and parent ID are essentially just the top level, like title itself. And then if you then look down, so these are all posts, right? These are all just posts, which are all of these things, but from different posts. And then eventually, when you go down here, you start seeing like comment ID, and then they have a parent. And so what these are referring to is the actual body of the post itself. And so here you see hi, you're in stocks, which is from this auto mod. And then after that you have, he really thinks he's the owner of everyone and everything in the US. And this is from this comment, right? And you can see that the parent ID here, 1MYJD4D, is essentially referring to this particular Reddit post. The same ID, so 1MJYD4D here. And you can see that even if you go all the way top, the post ID is the same. So you can see how they are kind of like referencing to each other. And so what you can do is you can then use that relationship to then build out the entire thread text, so that they're kind of like, they follow the same sequence of how you would usually scan through a Reddit post, right? You just like happens step by step. So we have the post, and then we have, I think I've shown you this earlier in the video, right? But basically, you'll see that, okay, hi, you're on stocks, which is from this auto mod, and then you have, he really thinks he's the owner of the world, never, no, he thinks he's the world emperor. Yeah, so these are all like just here, right? The beginning of the post, and as you go further down, it will just kind of like go step by step for each of these comments and replies, and then append them in the right order. And so that's very helpful eventually when you feed this into the AI, because when it kind of like goes through this post and summarizes it, you'll be able to summarize it the same way that as a human you would scan through the Reddit post. Okay, so now that we're done with building the entire thread of Reddit posts for each of the posts, now we're going to actually summarizing each of the posts and then sending it to your email. And I think this is the part where it's more straightforward. I think one of the things that I wanted to call out here is that here we're actually using a summarization chain. And so if you go to summarize, you'll see here summarization chain. And the purpose of this node is essentially just to allow you to summarize all the posts, right? You can set your characters per chunk overlap and stuff. But usually I just keep it to the default because in this case, I don't think there's a need for us to over-engineer like how we want it to overlap and stuff like that. And usually, if you wanna go into more details and stuff, you can even provide it like you can change the prompt of how you want it to summarize. And the difference between these two, so you have individual summary prompt and final prompt to combine. So the difference between these two is that for individual summary is that, for example, you are taking in, let's say per chunk is 1,000, and let's say you wanna for the first summary for this first post, how can you then summarize the first 1,000 chunks, right? Like how do you want, what kind of prompt do you want to give it to kind of like guide how it summarizes the first 1,000 chunks, for example, right? So it just does that over every 1,000 chunks, and then once you have all of these summarized chunks now, you then kind of like put them all together to get like an overall summary of all the chunks, right? And this is where the final prompt to combine sort of comes into play. And so you can kind of like guide these two different processes slightly differently based on the prompt that you provided. In this case, I'm just using the default, which is a very straightforward, provide me a concise summary of the following text. Okay, now that you've done that, I think the other important thing is here. So because if you realize what we will get from this summary thread, if I just like go back and just refer back to our last run, what you see is the output of this is kind of like just a text like that, right? But if you send this directly into your email, it wouldn't look very pretty because it will just be a bunch of text, right? And so what we're doing in this format HTML for Gmail is that we're taking each of these text instances here and 19 items for 19 Reddit posts, and for each of those we essentially want to summarize them in a way that is good to look at, right? And like for example this, we're essentially taking the raw text and then making them look something like that. So we have the title, we have the body, the summary body, and then if you read this and you're interested about this post, you can then click into this view Reddit thread, which will bring you to the exact Reddit post. So this is what this LLM node here is doing. And we look into the prompt, essentially we're filling in the text and then also the link, which is a URL. And then after that, it would kind of like go through this formatting. You then give it, you need to tell it like how you want the email to look like how you want the format to look like, which is where this is what this is doing. And you need to include these tags here, which are HTML tags. And the reason that you include these is so that eventually when it gets sent to your email, it will kind of like follow that HTML structure. For example, this is header 1, header 2, and then these are like body paragraphs, right? So you just need to make sure that you provide those the right text. And if you're having trouble with this, all the same, you can refer to ChatGPT and ask it to kind of like write you a HTML format for whatever structure that you're thinking of. And then this here is just some rules that are kind of like provided to ChatGPT, like do not wrap the entire thing in HTML body, etc. Yeah, so this is basically the entire workflow, and then the output that you see is this, right? So instead of having 19 separate items, now we have one item, which is all 19 condensed into a single HTML, and this text will then be used in this email node to then send to as a message body. And then here is where you set like, okay, remember earlier in the set note, we said that we want to send to a particular Gmail, right? So this is where we are using that .email, and this is where we're sending it to your specific email of your choice. And then the subject is when you can set it to the topic that you set earlier, and then you can, and then this two extra words is just my way of saying like this is a daily digest. You can name this whatever you want, and you can just go ahead and essentially like put in some random text here, right? And then it will just reflect on the topic of your email. So yeah, cool. So I think that's the end of the video. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know if you're interested in any other kinds of productivity workflows or even just general AI automation workflows. Yeah, thanks for sticking around. Peace.